Say hi, Papa.
Hi,
All right, give me your names.
I'm Wayne Riley.
Claire Riley.
Go ahead and start.
Okay. Just
You-
Grandpapa, what accomplishment are you most proud of?
I didn't quite get the question.
What accomplishment are you most proud of?
Accomplishment? Does that mean work or does that mean just any?
Just anything you've done.
Well, the most thing I'm so proud that I married your aunt, your grandmother, and so, which was a long time ago, 56 years ago. And I'm also proud of my children.
Okay, next question. What do you treasure the most?
What?
What do you treasure the most?
Treasure the most? Well, I treasure the family, and I treasure Pine Mountain Valley, and the fact that we came up here. And my father was a great person that knew what he was doing, very high educated, and so I'm just pleased with all that. And I'm particularly like this property we have, because it's really pretty.
What are you most proud of? Like, could be anything, not.
I'm not getting the words.
What are you most proud of? Of all the things you've done, what are you most proud of? All your accomplishments.
Well, it's almost like what I just said about. I mean, I just have to say the same thing. I have a good. I'm the oldest active forester in Georgia, and I have an excellent family, and I have a lot of friends, and have you and him and your mama, and I'm proud to be alive because I'm 84 years old.
You're not 84 years old.
82 years old.
82 years old.
82 years old.
Okay, what are some of the most important lessons you've learned in life?
Lessons? Who asked you, told you to ask all these
I made
questions?
them up.
I don't know how to answer that one. What would that be then?
Just any lesson you learned in life. I mean, what have you learned from all your life experience?
Well, I didn't learn to keep my mouth shut all the time, and I have.
What's the most positive lesson you learned? The thing you learned most about dealing with people and just the way you lived your life.
Well, I try to deal with people real nice. I have a lot of very rich people that I work for, and some of them that are very poor, like I am. And so I'm glad to work with them. And one thing I'm glad to be and proud of is that I'm a Christian and go to a good church. And I thank all of my children, and I know all that I know of are Christian, and they go to church and believe in Christ. And I don't know. Well, just so many things that I think I've told you enough.
Okay.
I want to check your sound level because that's the most critical thing.
Is there something about yourself that you think no one knows? Is there something about yourself that you think no one knows?
Something about me
Yes.
that what?
You think no one knows?
That think I know
No one knows.
enough. I don't know enough about anything I've done.
Now, is there something in your life that you think no one knows, that only you
no
know?
one knows.
Yes.
I don't know of anything. I can't think of anything that.
Okay. Where's your favorite place to be? Just be anywhere.
You don't have to.
Where's your, speak up, Clara.
Where's your favorite place to be?
Well, my favorite place to be is like today. I have all of our family right here in one time, and we only get to see them about 2 or 3 times a year, and so some of them we don't see but one time a year, and so I'm proud of that.
Who do you think you rely on the most?
Who do I think what?
You rely on the most.
I rely on the most. Well, right now, my wife, Grace.
So what does Mama mean to you?
If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have gotten to the hospital because then Gorman would have snatched me up, and then Grace and they both came down to the hospital with me on this last time, which is the most serious thing that I've ever had.
But in your life, in general, what has Mama meant to you?
Oh, well, she's meant just about everything I can think of. I mean, she's the reason we've got children is because she and I here. And so I don't know of anything except the fact that she's just the number one in my life.
Okay, what was the happiest moment of your life?
I don't know. Well, I don't seem to be happy, but when I reckon the happiest thing we did was when I married Grace. And, I can't think of. I've had an awful lot of happy things. I can't think of any more.
What was the saddest moment of your life?
What?
The saddest moment of your life?
Well, obviously, when his
Well,
mother died.
there's 3 times. When my brother died, my father died, and my mother died.
Mm.
Which makes me have tears, see.
Me too. Clara too. That's a happy question there, right?
Okay. How would you like to be remembered?
Be remembered?
Mhm.
I reckon because I just kept keeping on and keeping on.
Okay. Who was the most important person you met in your life?
Important person.
Yes.
You know, you're getting that answer could be answering the most important person, because I've met a lot of important people, including I shook the hand of President Roosevelt, and very few people around now can say they shook his hand. But the main one is when I met my wife and we had children.
So Mama's the most important person.
Right.
Yeah.
Who has the biggest influence on your life?
Did what?
Biggest influence on your life?
The biggest influence on your life.
Influence.
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 Yeah.
Like I don't know anything that would be so big as far as an influence.
No person that really influenced you, or the mentor to you, or your father. What about your father?
Well, father, but that was just from a father's standpoint. I had a lot of people that influenced me because, but I mean, they're like clients that gave my name to other people that gave me more work, and professors at college. In fact, one or two of them, in fact, one of them started me in my business. He gave me the first thing, and I was able to make several $100,000 out of it. But even Gorman made some money out of that one after we'd managed the property for 35 years.
What about Pop-Up? What kind of father was he?
He was a very, very good father, but we had to do what he said to do. He was we didn't curse, we didn't smoke, but he smoked. And he was, we thought he was really good because he was in the First World War, and I still have some of his clothes in the closet. And he decided to, he really told a story about me not having any job in order to get this place here in Pine Mountain Valley. He had been, he was anyhow, he worked with figures and things.
He was an
He was an accountant. Yeah.
Yeah, accountant. And a big plant in Texarkana, Texas. And we, at that time, it was during the major, 1932. That was a major thing that we're going through right now. Depression. And so we had, while we were out there, we were sitting high on the hog as far as he had a good job, automobile and everything else. And then the thing that hurt Mama and everybody else, so many people had no job. And they would come by begging for food.
Mm.
And so we would, every day Mom would cook breakfast and have it ready for the people that come by to beg.
Mm-hmm.
And we were there to pick up the plates and take them out to them. And sometimes the people were so, it was the first time they'd ever have begged. They come in with real nice clothes on, belt, I mean, just like they were office people.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't have anything, we hadn't had anything to eat in over 3 days now. And my wife and I just on the last line, and so we would fix the breakfast and have a table out on the front porch, and they would come up and eat, and then they go hunting for a job. And but anyhow, then we finally the mill stopped. One of the mills was a Cudahy Packing Company or Fisk Tire Company, making Fisk tire, Fisk tire, and they gave him an automobile, one of the office automobiles, and he got a thing put behind it and loaded up all the stuff we had, and started driving back here. We were going to back home, which was Butler, Georgia, and we finally got there, but we stopped at many places, and all the way we see people out begging for food and just doing anything to be living. But we finally got here, and he immediately got a job with the federal government. As back then, the federal government, if they had say a peach orchard, a company where they were making, well, they had people that would go around and check them out to make sure He got an office doing that. And then he got tired of that, and he got a job selling some type of like coffee, I believe it was. It was back then that days you'd travel all around and sell it, and you'd have people that you'd buy every week that you went by to sell them the coffee. And we were living over in West Point at that time, and he heard about Pine Mountain Valley, and so that was in 1930, 1938, 37, I believe it was. So he said, he went over and put his name on the list over here and said that I don't have a job. But he lied about it in order to do it. And he did it because he just always wanted some land, because he had land with his family down in Butler, Georgia. But other children had gotten all that after he got back from the war. And anyhow, well, he got this as one of the last houses that they built, and that one up there. And so anyhow, he was there, very important for him.
Okay.
What about Mimi?
Well, she was the same thing, but she was the one that kept us straight. We had to go to church. We had to do what she said to do. And she was the one that, if we did something bad, she was the one that switched us. And she didn't spank us, she switched us. She'd tell us to go out and get a switch. And we had to come back in and get the daylight switched out of it. The only thing she switched was our legs. But that made us stop right quick, because we didn't want to go through it but just a few times. And
Okay. Who has been the kindest to you in your life? Who's been the kindest to you in your life?
well, my family, I just said my family very most.
Okay. Are there any words of wisdom you'd like to pass along to me?
Can you get that one either? Say it again.
Are there any words of wisdom you would like to pass along to me?
Words of wisdom. Well, words of wisdom is, I don't know about. I think you can find the word of wisdom that I believe in. There's words coming from the Bible.
What's your favorite verse in the Bible?
Oh, so many I can't think of it. I can't. I don't know. I have to do a lot of thinking on that one.
That's all right. We'll go on to the next question. Okay.
So, where did you grow up?
When I what?
Grow up.
Fill up.
Grow up. Where'd you grow up?
Well, I grew up until I was 6 years old. Let's see. No, let's see. I grew up in Butler, Georgia for about the first 2 years. And the next 2 years in Memphis, Tennessee, when my dad was an office manager for Cudahy Packing Company. And the next 3 years, he was the office manager for the same place I mentioned before.
Fisk Tire Company?
Fisk Tire Company. And then just on down the road until we got back to Butler. And then came to here, and we've been here ever since.
What were your favorite things to do when you were a little boy here?
When we were little boys, all the kids in school close by, they would, much us boys, we went over every foot of every mountain, all the mountains, and back then the mountains burned every year. Somebody set them on fire and they would burn up to the top. And me and Charlie Minton, we always, when we set them on fire, we'd go out and put them all out as much as we could. And I don't think it, sometimes we get it put out where they didn't come back. And so,
Is that where you decided you want to be a forester?
yeah, I'd always wanted to be a forester. And I wanted to be an archaeologist or a forester. And so when I went to the University of Georgia in forestry, I got a minor in archaeology. I was able to get in to that particular group. And so I spent all my weekends for a whole year going out excavating Indian mounds and burials and village sites and everything else. And that's the reason I'm interested in it right now. And it was very unique that when we moved here, we found that this whole hillside behind us, all down through there, and all around the garden and all the way up to the other part, house is a burial site. You find spots everywhere. In fact, this mill over here, this old mill you don't see, all those rocks that were on that came from Indian burial site. Because on top of each burial, it was just underground, but it was a rock, a big rock on top of each one of them. And those were found. And the land that we are here, living on right here had never been plowed. That's where you still see where they dug up the burial. Mm-hmm. And so all the way down the foot of the hill on that side, down this side, and all the way out just the other side of the bridge. It was all no burial site. I mean, the first owners knew it was a burial site, and they didn't cultivate any further down than where my garden is out there.
Do you think that the Indians chose this as a burial site because it was a really beautiful?
I don't know why it was. I think it was, but you can find trails coming down through here, going to the water right here, this waterfall, and there's another water right down there, another big trail going down there. It looks like water washing, but it's actually an Indian trail that washed down. You can see most of you can tell which is a trail. It'll be going toward a certain thing, and if it had been cultivated, it'd go straight down a creek. But there's one straight one down to this one here, and another big straight one down to the other one down there. And because all back in here were Indian villages, all back over here, I've picked out a lot of Indian artifacts on the other properties over here. And so they use this water right here. And there was a spring right here, right at the base of this ridge right here, by the waterfall, was a spring there. You can still dig down and see the water. And in the middle of that big bottom outside, where it looks, come around the bend down there, there's a spring right in the middle of that. I never have been in there to check on that one, but the spring's still there. And so, anywhere you go around here, people say all the artifacts have been picked up, and actually, the artifacts of India here in the United States have never been touched compared. Most of them are underground now.
Okay, Clara?
Okay. What was your childhood like?
Your childhood like? What was your childhood like? Was it fun?
Yeah, it was all completely fun all the time, except when I misbehaved. Now, back when in my childhood, if you called it from there to 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, well, I we didn't have much money, and I always wanted to go to college, and so I started running a trap line. And that means using steel traps to catch otters and hide. And so I did that in the wintertime for 3 years, and well, around 4, but there 3 major ones. And I saved all my money doing that, and I paid my way through the first 2 years of college with the money that I did on that first, business that I was in. That was a business as far as I was concerned. I built a log cabin up at the house because my mother didn't want me to skin the animals inside of the house.
You built the cabin yourself?
Yeah, well, I had Papa and several other men in the valley help me put the top on and all that stuff. But I cut the trees and drug them down with a mule up here on the top of the hill, drug them all the way up there until I got enough of them. We had a mule. That's what we had to work the field with.
What was his name?
His name was Hungry. Papa called him Hungry because every time he got to the end of the thing, he would reach over and grab something right quick and chew it, particularly if it was corn.
Okay. Who are your favorite relatives when you were growing up? Who are your favorite relatives when you were growing up?
Relatives.
Relative. Well, your relative is your family. And
And were your grandparents around, or your?
grandparents were here.
What were their names?
Well, my grandmother was lived in Butler, Georgia, and well, both of them lived in Butler, Georgia. On my father's side, he was the sheriff of the county, and my grandfather, who was the mayor of the county, of the city, Butler, Georgia. And
Do you remember their names?
yeah, Owen D. Gorman, and that's how Gorman got his name. And my name came with the first name, Owen. And one of the things that when the Rileys was one of the first people to come into Harris County, into Talbot County, and one of them was a professor named John B. Gorman, and he wrote a book, which is well known, called Around the World in '84. And I have 4 copies of it, and I keep one around here to show people. And well, I got one right here.
Take it back to the chair, Papa, where I can see you. Where I can see it.
Yeah, Around the World in '84. And he was noted. He was noted.
Sit on the chair, Papa.
He came from a very wealthy family. The Gormans were very wealthy.
That's Mammoth side of family, right?
That's right. And they own thousands of acres in Talbot and different counties. And my grandfather, he's been dead for he's been dead for he's been dead for 78 years. 78 years. And no, wait a minute, I'll take that back. He died in 1930. He died in 1939 or 1940. And my grandmother died about 3 years later. And
What was her name?
Clara Gorman. And I can't think of anything else. But anyhow, I was going to tell you about this book. Funny thing about the book is because I looked everywhere for a good one that I could. The others I found were just torn and found up in old houses, and people had kept them torn up and various things. One of them been stolen from the University of Georgia Bank because it had University of Georgia. Now they could have thrown it out, but I don't know. And but this one, Grace and I were in up in Thomas in what's the big town north of south of heck, what is it?
Thomas.
It's north of New York on the right.
Of New York?
Yeah,
To the state?
big coastal area, big.
Florida?
New Hampshire or New England or Connecticut?
The one that lives right on the ocean, city.
Manhattan?
Bar
Harbor?
No. What's the name of that darn town?
I don't know.
Anyhow.
That doesn't matter.
Anyhow, and I went, when we got there, I asked some people, could you know where you could get a good book, I mean, any old book? Oh yeah, you can go up so and so and so and so. Went up there, and it was a big, tall building, like about 2 stories. Old, rusty looking thing. Went in, and there's an old fella there sitting on the table. And I asked him, I said, look, we're from Georgia, and so I'm asking a stupid question. Have you ever heard of a book called Around the World in 84 by John B. Gorman? And he thought a minute and said, oh yeah, we have that book. And so he got in, climbed up in this red ladder that you could roll along the ground, went to the far corner over yonder, at least 20 feet over there, picked up the book on the end, and he knew it was exactly. Came back, and this is it right here.
That's incredible.
And it had books, and this man, and John B. Gorman, his picture is here, and he looks like the Gormans that did back then. And he was a friend of a countess, a real rich person in England. They joined together and went around the world in 84 together. And you can look at the book. But
Well, let's ask. What's the next question, Claire?
Okay. The next question is, how did you and Grandmama meet?
how did I what?
You and Grandmama meet.
How did we
How
meet?
did
Oh,
you
meet.
Yeah.
I was on the faculty, and it was a partial faculty and as a part of the at Berry College where your father went. And I took the boys out in the woods. The ones that wanted to be a forester had farm forestry, and I taught them farm forestry. And I got to, I had to do things that I didn't want to do, and one of them was the professor, president of the thing, said, Owen, I want you to go to the girls' room this Sunday, and I want you to teach the class at the girls' particular room. And I said, I don't like that. He said, well, you've got to do it. We always do it, and you need to do it. And so I thought and thought and thought, and I finally thought, well, I know the main person who handles all that business, and I'm gonna call him and see when he has it. And I called him and I said, look, I can't be saying, I cannot do teaching this time. And so he said, well, I'll do it for you this time. And so he did, but he didn't tell he said, well, he didn't tell, he said, well, I'll go over there for you. But he didn't teach. And so Grace was there in the class, and she had to teach the class. And so that made her mad. And so she hummed and get all that until I happened to go in the store to get something to eat, and she was sitting there at the table, and she was sitting at a table with she and another girl, and she came over and just tore me up. Why in the world didn't you come over there and made the wet setting hand she was? And so after that, I noticed her. And I kept noticing her. I said, you know, she's a pretty good looking girl. And so I did everything I could, and finally we got married. after she graduated. And you could tell it, she could tell you a lot more about it, but that's basically the time.
Okay. Can you describe the moment when you saw your child for the first time?
Say the word
Can
again.
you describe the moment when you saw your child for the first time?
Saw the first child?
When Aunt Lori was born.
You mean,
Can you describe the moment when you saw your child for the first time?
When you saw Laurie for the first time, your first child.
oh, we were real pleased, because I had wanted a boy, I wanted a boy or a girl, it didn't make any difference. And she was so pretty that we were just so glad to see her.
Okay. And is there anything else that you think I left out?
What now?
Is there anything else that you think I left out?
Did you leave out any? Is there anything else that you'd like to say? That's important to you?
Yeah, I'm glad that I have a granddaughter that can ask such good questions.
All right. First of all, tell me your names.
Clara Riley.
Grace Riley.
And today is the day after Thanksgiving,
And it's the National Day of Listening.
2008. It's the National Day of Listening. So, let's go.
So, what accomplishment are you most proud of?
My family.
What do you treasure the most?
Well, there again, it would be my family.
Okay. What are you most proud of? Like anything, not accomplishment, but
Oh, well, I was proud when I was 3rd District Homemaker of the Year through the Extension Service. I was proud then. I was proud when I was the choir director at the church, and we had a youth choir that performed on TV and did Christmas cantatas and a lot of different things.
okay. What are some of the most important lessons you've learned in life?
That that's a good question. That we have to make the best of the situation as it is.
Is there something about yourself that you think no one knows?
There's probably lots about me that no one knows.
Where's your favorite place to be?
Pine Mountain Valley.
Who do you rely on the most?
I rely on Owen the most, on Grandpapa.
What was the happiest moment of your life?
Maybe when I got married 56 years ago, or when my 3 children were born.
What was the saddest moment of your life?
There have been various sad moments, but I can't think of one that particularly stands out.
And how would you like to be remembered?
As a good wife and a good mother and a good grandmother.
Who was the most important person in your life?
Your grandfather.
Who's been the biggest influence on your life?
My parents.
Who has been the kindest to you in your life?
Well, my parents.
Are there any words of wisdom you'd like to pass along to me?
Be the best of what you can be, and always do it for the right reasons.
Tell me, I want to hear, you talk about your parents for the most important influence in your life. Tell me a little bit about your parents. What were their names, and what was the thing you admired the most about them?
Well, Abner Caldwell Stevens and Mary Lou Annie Knight McFarland Stevens. And they always did everything for my best, encouraged me. They always planned for me to go to college. They always planned for me to be successful in whatever I wanted to do. My father was an entrepreneur when that was not a known word. He had many businesses that he went into, and I worked in the businesses because I preferred that to being in the home when I was growing up.
So you were always a businesswoman. That was so you.
You always liked to work.
Right?
And
My father could add up a column of 6 figures faster than I could do it on an old-fashioned calculator. He had that kind of a mind.
Okay. How's your life been different than what you'd imagined?
I don't know that I imagined my life any different from what it has been. And my mother was a school teacher her whole life. She said she'd rather have a room full of wriggling kids anytime over an old typewriter. She taught in a one-room school where you taught all the grades.
was she your teacher?
No,
Where did you grow up?
all over Georgia and every other place. I was born in Atlanta, lived in South Georgia, lived in Columbus, lived in Rome, lived in Athens, lived in Columbus, and then lived in Pine Mountain Valley. Lived in Vidalia at one time.
Okay. What was your childhood like?
Well, it was like I was an only child because my only brother was 8 years older than I. And by the time I was pretty good size, he was in the Navy and gone. But he was always very thoughtful of me. He always sent me gifts from around the world. And when he was 21 years old, he was the assistant manager of the Hermitage Hotel in Nashville, Tennessee, which was the nicest one there at the time. And he would have us up for the weekend, and we'd stay in the presidential suite and have flowers and fruit every day, and that was very impressive to me.
What was his name?
Lucius McFarland. And Virginia, my cousin, went with us one time up there. And we went to an adjoining hotel on my birthday because he knew the person who would let you in. And although I was underage, he let me in. And we danced for my birthday to this famous band at the time, Tommy Dorsey. And Virginia taught Uncle Lucius some new jitterbug steps because she was quite a dancer back then. And he and his girlfriend at the time won the Tennessee jitterbug contest that year using some of those steps.
Okay. Who were your favorite relatives when you were growing up?
My favorite relatives was mostly my mother's family. I didn't know my father's family very well. There were not very many of them, and they were much older.
How did you and Grandpapa meet?
He was on the staff at Berry College, and I worked in the Dean of Women's office. And my roommate was president of our Sunday school class, and she was supposed to tell him to teach the lesson that Sunday because the professors up there had to teach the Sunday school classes, and our regular teacher was in Mexico. And she went off for the weekend and left me a note in the typewriter to contact him. And it happened to be raining that day when I went down to the office to take the student deposits and take care of business. And coming back by the store where we met the school car again, he was sitting there, and I walked up to him and introduced myself and told him he was supposed to teach the lesson. He said he would give a talk on forestry, but he wouldn't teach a Sunday school lesson, and I told him I didn't care what he taught on, just be there. But he didn't. He went to Tennessee to see his girlfriend and sent somebody else. So the next time I saw him, I chewed him out. But he did send Dr. Green every time after that. But then my next assignment was to work in what we call the big library. There were 3 libraries on campus, and he was friends with the librarian, and he teased her about having me work there and said what a mistake she'd made. But of course the end result was we ended up dating that summer when I went to the University of Georgia. And when I went back to Berry, I was a senior, and he asked his boss about dating a student, and he said absolutely not, unless maybe she was a senior.
Now you went to the University of Georgia?
The summer before my senior year.
I didn't know that. Now that was that like a temporary thing, or you transferred there?
I just went there for the summer along with one of my roommates.
Your answer and Grandpapa's answer are almost the same.
What did you like most about Papa when you met him? After you got over being mad at him?
Oh, that's a good question. I like the fact that he was honest, that he was a gentleman, he was polite.
Now you were at Berry College, and were you working your way through school?
Oh, yes. And he worked his way through school also.
He told me he ran his trap line. He paid for his first 2 years of college running his
That's
trap
how
line
it
here.
And then he went back to school on the GI Bill after he got back from Japan.
Now, what did you think the first time you came to Pine Mountain Valley?
Well, I came with him one weekend to meet his parents. And I didn't think I would never thought about living in Pine Mountain Valley at that time. We lived in Athens for a year and Columbus for 3 years before we bought a house here.
Okay.
Now you always thought of yourself more as a city girl, right? Before you came to.
Oh, well, I'd lived in small towns and large towns and in the country. In fact, when we were trying to get the money to buy the first house we had in Pine Mountain Valley, which was a house and 5 acres, was $6,500. I talked to several mortgage brokers in Columbus, and one of them told me that a lot of people thought they wanted to live in the country till they got there, and then they were unhappy. And I told him that you were as happy as you wanted to be, no matter where you lived, that I'd lived in the city and I'd lived in the country. And I liked every place I'd ever lived.
Okay, Clara.
Okay. What were your parents like?
Well, since I was raised as almost an only child, with my brother being so much older, in some ways they were strict, in others they were very lenient. For instance, my father didn't like for me to wear shorts, but he let me wear, because girls really didn't wear shorts back then that much. But he let me because the other girls did. And my mother would, when I was very small, one of the things I remember was that I was very shy. And she would stand outside the store and give me the money to go in to buy whatever fruit I wanted for that day.
Mm-hmm.
She would make me go in, pick it out, and pay for it, and come back out without her. And one time when I decided I was not going to get it, I got a spanking right there on the sidewalk, after which I went in and bought the fruit and came back out. But she was training me.
Okay. What were your grandparents like?
The only one I remember, my grandfather died when I was very young, but he's responsible for the name Grace. Every time he had a granddaughter, he had learned to like the name Grace, and every time there was a granddaughter born, and he was told what the name was, he said, why didn't they name her Grace? So when I came along, my mother said, he's not going to say, why didn't they name her Grace? But I didn't remember him at all because I was very young when he died. But I do remember my grandmother, and she would come and stay with us for months at a time sometimes. She was a very sweet woman.
Okay. Can you describe the moment when you saw your first child?
Well, my first child was Lori, and of course we were very happy with her. Back then, you didn't know before they were born what you were going to get. And at first, her father, when I was expecting, sort of wanted a son. And then we had some friends who had a little girl, and he just fell in love with her, and he decided he'd like a daughter. It's a good thing he did. But of course, once they're born, you like whatever you get.
Well, since I'm here, what was it like when I came?
Well, you were the first son, so that was great. There was no doubt what your name was going to be. It was going to be Owen L. Riley Jr.
Okay. Is there anything else that you think I left out?
Can't think of anything. You ask a lot of questions.
Thank you.
Here's the tape.
What are you taping?
I'm taking Mama. So, I just want you to tell me a brief history of your life.
I can't give you a brief history.
Oh, well.
It'll take a while.
So you were you born in Boston, Georgia?
No, I was born in Atlanta, Georgia.
In Atlanta, Georgia.
And then you moved to lots of different places.
Right.
So, when were you born in Atlanta?
August 28, 1932.
And just tell me, brief synopsis.
Well,
The things you remember the most.
one of the things I remember is when we lived out on the farm outside of Thomasville, Georgia, before I started the school, going to the tobacco field and riding the horseback on the sled with the tobacco, and my brother Lucius being thrown from a horse in the yard. And then we moved from there to Boston, Georgia, which is where my father was from originally. His father was the local judge and a farmer. And we moved back there my last 2 years of high school because my father, quote, retired. So he only had a barber shop and a furniture store after he retired and a fish market. But he became ill with heart problems and was in and out of the hospital several times in the next few years. So I went off to Berry College.
How old were you when you went to Berry?
I left the week after my 16th birthday on the bus with the trunk by myself,
And
which you could do in those days. I
So-
graduated from college when I was 19, married when I was 20. Worked for Motors Insurance Corporation in Atlanta and Athens and Columbus until after Owen was born. And then I became a full-time mom, except I was editor of the Harris County Journal and a correspondent for the Columbus Ledger-Enquirer newspaper while I was staying at home.
so you're editor of the Harris County Journal while you're staying at home?
And then I taught school for a little while. because-
What'd you teach in school?
8th grade English, because the superintendent came to me and asked me to teach. And I worked on my master's in education, but I did not finish it
Where'd you work on your master's?
at Columbus State University, which was Columbus College at that time. And what else?
Well,
You had children.
yeah. What were some of the other jobs you had? You worked for State Farm.
I worked for State Farm Insurance when Norman was a sophomore in college. I went back to work. We were having a recession for one thing, and another thing, I was bored with all the volunteer work. I had headed up about every drive in Harris County. Heart, March of Dimes, cancer, you name it. I had been the head of it for the county for about everything. And I was a little tired of doing all that, and we needed the money because we had 2 in college. And so I went back to work part-time for State Farm as an office manager, and within a year I was working full-time. And I worked for State Farm for 17 years before I retired.
Well, I didn't realize it was that long.
I worked for Jerry 10 years, for Doc 5 years, for Rick 2 years, and by myself for a year.
Now tell me, when you got married to Papa and you moved to Pine Mountain Valley, what was it like living here then when you first came here, and how were Minda and Papa? What were they doing? And
Well, he was working as an accountant at Fort Benning. He was the accountant for all the fire departments at Fort Benning. And,
You through talking?
you still talking?
and,
You can come sit
Mammy
down.
was a stay-at-home mama, but then she worked as a dietitian at the high school
Huh.
till she retired.
Now, what were so? Did you know Papa's grandparents or Pop? Yeah,
No.
Papa's, no, they weren't alive then.
No.
All right. Well, let me get a shot of the two of you together. So, what's the best thing about being married been for you?
We don't have to beat on each other.
So, tell me what you mean to each other.
You tell me first.
Well, after 56 years, we know each other pretty well. So,
So, if you had to do it all over again, would you marry the same person?
yes,
Certainly.
yes.
All right.